Well, the Evil Dead franchise seems to still resonate with fans, I think because the filmmakers, and there have been many of them that have made the Evil Dead films now, not just the features, but the TV series Ash vs. Evil Dead, they've always accounted for the audience's imagination. They leave parts of the frame dark, or they just plant the seeds for the audience to build the monster. And I think it's that invitation to contribution, asking the audience to contribute their imagination to the product that keeps it alive and the audience interested in it.
To that, I would add, the heroes of these movies are not anyone with special skills or abilities. These are average Joe citizens put in a dire circumstance, and I think the audience goes, that could be me. Because there's no superhero anything, they have no superpowers, they could all be killed in the blink of an eye. So that's what I think people can relate to that.
It has its own lore, like most horror movies. Like there's vampire stories that have their own weaknesses and strengths and abilities, and The Evil Dead is not dissimilar. It's a book that is open, that has ancient Kandarian burial rites and funerary incantations that if you read them aloud, if you recite them, it awakens these spirits and they possess the living. And I think what's unique about it is that they have a nasty sense of humor about themselves. And they exist only, not to exist, they exist not to exist like vampires, to drink blood so that they can live, but they exist to torment people and to create terror. And that's really a great playground for filmmakers and actors alike.
Plus, I think the Evil Dead movies are more over the top than your average movie. More blood, more carnage, more mayhem, more suffering. It's more of the full Monty experience. And I got this at the screening last night, was when the first thing of blood, real blood happened, there was from the crowd, they went, oh, this is what we're gonna get. We're gonna get this.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, now they wanted it, and they kept getting it. But the first one was really, it was a reaction that they really were waiting for. And it was a big one. And they were like, oh, perfect.
I really like the Evil Dead movies, and to me, they're less like a story set in the horror genre than a ride designed to manipulate the audience and take them on a thrill-seeking experience. And that's why I love going to the movies. I love having this communal experience with the crowd, whether it's horror or a love story, where we all feel the same thing. Myself, the person I'm with, feel emotion, feel fear, feel hope with strangers. And in some way, it connects you. Anyways, this experience of the Evil Dead movies provides that in a horror form.
And I like the fact that we're out of the cabin. This is a whole new ballgame now, because if you can take it out of the cabin, out of the woods, it really is about the books now, which are allegedly 3 books. So it's, where is that darn book now? And what is that darn book up to? So this is where they found that darn book this time.
It was really Bruce Campbell that's the draw to all of the early Evil Dead work, like 3 movies and a whole series that ran for 3 years, Ash vs. Evil Dead. So the first test was, could it be made without Bruce? And because of the great filmmaking abilities of Fede Alvarez, he proved that it could be. And then I think Leah's taken it to the next logical step and shown that you just need some great actors and a real desire to manipulate the audience.
That's when I was pushed out. When Sam realized that it just didn't matter. We'll just get somebody younger.
Now the audience loves him.
And that's fine.
They want to see more of him. Working with him for my part was a wonderful experience. He's a really nice guy. That's the thing about these horror filmmakers. You think they're really depraved and like gonna be sick people in person, but no, they're usually pretty funny people that want to provide thrills for the audience. And working with him was a pleasure. He's a craftsman at being a filmmaker. He really understands how to put shots together, how to build suspense. He understands the puppetry involved, being the great puppet master, knowing where the audience will be, not giving them the scare, pulling them in and then giving it to them when they least expect it. So he's He's a very good storyteller, manipulator, but also he told us that he wanted to center this picture on the family. That felt new to us.
I think it's creepazoidal what he did with it, because it's a pressure cooker and it's not random people who are going for a fun weekend at a cabin. This is a frickin' family. We gave both these guys, Fede and Lee, the opportunity to determine the type of story. Is it going to be fantastical like Evil Dead 2? Will there be elements of humor? Or is it pretty straight ahead? And both guys chose a little more of that route, which really makes for good solid horror. It's not a laugh fest, but there were laughs because the audience would be like going, oh, oh, and then they'll laugh because of like they're still processing it.
The story of Evil Dead Rise, written by Lee, is really the story of all Evil Dead movies. Characters that you come to care about and know find this dreaded ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead, and they unwittingly recite the resurrection passages, and these demons are called forth and possess the living. And the only way to stop them is through the act of bodily dismemberment.
And that doesn't even work every time.
No,
It's
not
tough.
always.
Yeah.
How do you recommend stopping them? What's the most tried and true method?
Tried and true method is to recite the passage that opens a vortex and sucks it back out. But then the problem is if you don't recite the other passage that closes it back up, you get sucked into oblivion like Ash did.
Oh,
Because he forgot to say the humbatia batikaharaho and bring himself and close
Yeah.
it back up.
that's
So you got to be careful. You're playing with fire. The book's got some interesting powers to it.
don't read it.
Yeah, don't be reading that book.
Just leave it alone.
It is a different form of acting entirely. It is a very technical form of acting. You're not acting a scene out like scene 37 talking with us, at a cafe where you can run the whole scene. Because in a horror movie, about a third of the way through the scene, someone's going to get possessed, knock the table over, and there's going to be a huge fight, so you're going to have to stop the scene, reset, bring the monster in and the fake arm and all that crap, and you're going to chunk your way through that. And you have to rely on the director to help you. That piece of the puzzle has to fit. And so you rely on them to tell you where you need to be for that. What I really am impressed with is the two leads. They not only got through it, they did what I term, they leaned into it. Like they made those characters, as when everyone gets possessed, it's a good job to be able to go from a normal person to a possessed person and pull it off and not be intimidated by that. And not be intimidated by having the shotgun or the chainsaw. I mean, she took that role and made it her own, and I'm grateful because it could have been weird of like, oh, I have to imitate, Bruce Campbell, or she didn't have to do any of that. And she's perfectly made her own realized, they both did their own realized performance.
Well, I think the cast was great. All of the actors, like Bruce is saying, were very, very powerful. And I think it was really important because Lee is telling a horror story about the family. So it is directly proportional to the effectiveness, how much you care about these characters. And that has to do with writing and mostly the performance of the actors. And those.
And then getting a performance. A lot of directors talk a good game. They do the cool shots and do all the effects, and they come up to talk to an actor and go, and they have no idea. They're very good at technical, but can't do the personal part of it. And Lee could do both. And it's a tricky dance of being able to come up to an actor and get out of them what you need. And I saw Lee just direct a couple of times, and I was like, oh, he's good. Because the second take of an audition, for example, was better because of what he said. The innocent must suffer. That was one of Sam. Sam had 3 or 4 cardinal rules Another one was, at the time, was you must taste blood to be a hero. Blood has to be involved. And you had one that you were dancing with, the dead must rise. So the people you think are dead are not really dead. You know, and we give these filmmakers, I would consider a lot of leeway.
That was,
But
yeah,
there is
Joel
an
Newton.
there is an Evil Dead sandbox that you gotta, you know, people are gonna get possessed and certain things happen and certain rules are at play. But other than that, they get to have hopefully a good time.
Horror has always been a great starting ground for directors because they usually have very little resources.
Right.
Just a bunch of actors, camera, and their imagination, and their knowledge of what the audience can bring to it. So they have to like make it work for nothing usually. Great training ground.
Evil Dead is your worst nightmare.
That's a good one.